I still remember the smell of roasted turkey and expensive wine the moment I stepped into that restaurant. Everything looked warm and inviting, soft golden lights, polished wooden tables, quiet laughter floating in the air. It was my mother's birthday dinner, something my sister had planned weeks in advance. She insisted everyone be there, said it was family only, and told me to come early. I believed her. That was my first mistake. Growing up, I was always the extra piece in our family. Same blood, same last name, but never the same treatment. My sister was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I was the one who was expected to understand, to compromise, to stay quiet. When our father died, things only got worse. His absence created a strange hierarchy, and somehow I ended up at the bottom of it. That night, I wore the best outfit I owned. Nothing flashy, just clean and respectful. I wanted to belong, even if it was just for one dinner. As I walked toward the long table in the center of the restaurant, I saw them all already seated, my mother, my sister, her husband, my cousins, even an uncle I hadn't seen in years. There was one empty chair left, right at the end. I smiled, relieved, but before I could pull it out, my sister looked up and frowned. "Oh," she said, her voice light but sharp. "This table is for family." For a second, I thought she was joking. I laughed awkwardly, waiting for someone, anyone, to correct her. No one did. My mother avoided my eyes. My brother-in-law suddenly became very interested in his phone. The waiter stood frozen beside me, confused. "I am family," I said quietly. My sister tilted her head, pretending to think. "I mean, immediate family. You know what I mean." I did know what she meant. She meant I wasn't important enough. I wasn't married, didn't have kids, didn't bring status to the table. I was just there. "There's a small table near the window," she added, pointing vaguely behind me. "You can sit there." The words burned. People at nearby tables were starting to glance over. I felt my face heat up, my chest tighten. For a moment, I considered walking out. But then I looked at my mother. She said nothing. That silence hurt more than the words. "Fine," I said. The waiter hesitated. "Sir, would you like?" "I'm fine," I repeated, cutting him off. I sat alone at the small table by the window, watching them laugh and clink glasses like I didn't exist. I ordered water. Nothing else. I told myself I was just there to show respect, that I could endure one night. What they didn't know was that I wasn't broke. Far from it. For years, I had quietly built my own life. While they dismissed me, I worked 2 jobs, learned how to invest, started a small online business that slowly turned into something big. I never told them. Every time I hinted at doing well, my sister would roll her eyes or make a joke about fake internet money. So I stopped talking. I let them believe I was struggling. It was easier that way. Dinner dragged on. Appetizers arrived, seafood towers, imported cheeses, dishes I had only seen in magazines. Wine bottles came and went. I watched the waiter carefully write everything down, his pen moving faster with every order. I noticed how confidently my sister ordered, like someone else would take care of it. Halfway through the meal, my cousin waved the waiter over. "Add another bottle," he said. "The expensive one." The waiter nodded and glanced, just briefly, in my direction. Our eyes met for a split second. Something passed between us, recognition, maybe curiosity. I smiled faintly and looked back at my glass of water. When dessert time came, my sister stood up and tapped her glass. "A toast," she said. "To family. The people who really matter." Some laughed. Some clapped. I stayed seated. Then she turned to the waiter. "We'll take the bill. All together." The waiter nodded and disappeared. That was the moment I decided I was done swallowing everything. A few minutes later, the waiter returned, not to their table, but to mine. He placed the bill folder gently in front of me. "Sir," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "the total for your party comes to $2,200. The restaurant went quiet. My sister whipped her head around. "What are you doing?" she snapped. "That's not his bill." The waiter looked confused. I was told this guest would be handling it. I met my sister's eyes and stood up slowly. "No," I said calmly. "You said this table was for family. I'm not family. So I assume you're not expecting me to pay." A ripple of whispers spread through the room. My mother's face went pale. "I never said that," my sister hissed, though her voice shook. I opened the bill folder, glanced at the total, and closed it again. "You ordered confidently. I assumed you had it covered." The waiter shifted uncomfortably. "So, how would you like to proceed?" I reached into my pocket, pulled out my card, and held it up, not handing it over, just enough for them to see. "I'll pay," I said. but not for disrespect. My sister stood up, panic flashing across her face. You can't just. I can, I interrupted. And I will. But first, I think we need to clear something up. Every eye in the restaurant was on us now. I took a step closer to the table, my voice steady but loud enough to carry. You've treated me like an outsider my entire life, I said. Tonight, you finally said it out loud. So here's what's going to happen next. The waiter swallowed. And that was only the beginning. I didn't sit back down. Once the words were out, there was no going back. My sister's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to swallow something sharp. My mother finally looked at me then, really looked at me, as if seeing a stranger standing where her child used to be. You're embarrassing us, my sister said through clenched teeth. I almost laughed. Embarrassment. After years of being ignored, talked over, and pushed aside, that was the word she chose. I was embarrassed when you told me I wasn't family, I replied calmly. I was embarrassed when no one here corrected you. Consider this even. My brother-in-law stood up slightly, trying to take control. Let's all calm down. We don't need a scene. You already made one, I said, turning to him. You just didn't expect to be part of it. The waiter hovered nearby, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. Other diners pretended not to stare, but their attention was obvious. The manager had started watching from across the room. My mother finally spoke. Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice thin. If you wanted help paying, you could have just said so. That hurt more than I expected. Not anger, just disappointment. Even now, she assumed I was struggling. I don't need help, I said. And I don't need to explain myself anymore. I slid my card back into my wallet and looked at the waiter. Split the bill, I said. Everything ordered at this table goes on one check. My water goes on another. A murmur ran through the table. You can't do that, my sister said quickly. You offered to pay. I offered to pay with respect, I corrected. That offer has been withdrawn. The waiter nodded, relieved to have clear instructions, and turned to leave. My sister grabbed her purse and started rummaging through it, her movements sharp and frantic. She leaned toward my mother and whispered something I couldn't hear. My mother's eyes widened. You don't have enough? My mother asked softly. My sister snapped her head up. Of course I do. I just didn't expect it all. At once. I knew that tone. It was the same one she used growing up when she borrowed money and assumed someone else would cover it. She had ordered without thinking, convinced that someone, me, my mother, fate, would step in. The manager approached the table now, smiling tightly. Is everything all right here? Yes, I said before anyone else could speak. We're just sorting out the bill. The manager glanced at my sister, then at me, sensing the tension. Take your time, he said, though his eyes suggested the restaurant preferred resolution sooner rather than later. I stepped back toward my small table, but I didn't sit. I watched. I listened. My cousin leaned in. I thought you said this place wasn't that expensive, he muttered to my sister. It's fine, she snapped. Just give me a minute. She pulled out one card, then another, then another. Her hands were shaking now. You could just let him pay, my aunt whispered, nodding in my direction. Why make this a thing? Because he's doing this on purpose, my sister hissed. He's always been jealous. Jealous. The word almost made me smile. If only she knew. The waiter returned with 2 bill folders. He placed the large one carefully in front of my sister, the smaller one in front of me. My bill was $3. I picked it up, walked to the front counter, and paid it immediately. The receipt printed with a soft hum. I folded it neatly and put it in my pocket. Then I turned back. At the table, the panic had fully set in. My sister swiped her first card. Declined. She tried another. Declined. My mother leaned back, suddenly looking older. How much is it exactly? She asked. $2,200, the waiter said politely. My mother sucked in a breath. That's. We can split it, my uncle offered, though he didn't sound confident. I don't have that kind of room on my card, my cousin said quickly. My sister's eyes darted to me. Just help this once, she said, her voice dropping. We'll figure it out later. I walked back to the table slowly. Help, I repeated, like you helped me tonight. She looked away. You don't understand, my mother said softly. This is your sister. And I was your son, I replied. Still am. But tonight, that didn't seem to matter. Silence fell heavy over the table. The manager cleared his throat. If there's a problem, we do have options. Partial payments. Or, I'll pay, I said. Every head snapped up. But, I continued, I'll be very clear about what this means. I placed my card on the table, not handing it to the waiter yet. This is not a favor, I said. This is the last time I clean up a mess created by disrespect. After tonight, don't call me when you need something. Don't invite me out of obligation. And don't pretend we're close when it's convenient. My sister's eyes were wet now, whether from anger or fear, I couldn't tell. You're being dramatic, she said weakly. No, I said. I'm being honest. Something you've never liked. I slid the card toward the waiter. He took it quickly, like he was afraid someone might change their mind. While he processed the payment, I looked around the table one last time. Faces I had known my entire life looked different now, smaller somehow. Less powerful. The waiter returned with the receipt and handed it to me. Thank you, sir, he said quietly. I signed, stood up straight, and addressed the table one final time. Enjoy dessert, I said. I hope it tastes better than this night will feel tomorrow. Then I turned and walked out of the restaurant, the cool night air hitting my face like freedom. Behind me, I heard my sister call my name. I didn't turn around, because for the first time in my life, I didn't need their approval. And I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the moment they realized I was no longer the one they could push aside. I didn't go home right away. I walked for a long time, letting the night cool the anger that still burned in my chest. The city felt different when I wasn't carrying the weight of trying to belong. Every step away from that restaurant felt like reclaiming something I had lost years ago. My phone started buzzing before I reached the end of the block. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I ignored the first call. Then another. Then messages began to pile up. My sister, you didn't have to humiliate us like that. My mother, please come back. We need to talk. My aunt, family doesn't do this to each other. I stopped walking and finally checked the screen. Not one message asked how I felt. Not one apologized. They were all about them. I typed one message, sent it to the family group chat, and muted it immediately. Tonight, you showed me exactly where I stand. I paid the bill. You don't get to charge me for my dignity too. Then I put my phone away. The next morning, I woke up lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to explain myself to anyone. I made coffee, sat by the window, and opened my laptop. Work waited for me, as it always had. The business I'd built quietly, patiently, while they underestimated me. By noon, the calls started again. This time, they weren't angry. They were careful. My sister left a voicemail, her voice tight. I think we got off on the wrong foot last night. We should clear the air. My mother sent a longer message, full of regret and soft words. She said she hadn't realized how hurt I'd been. She said families made mistakes. I read them once. Then I closed the app. That afternoon, I met with my financial advisor. It was a meeting I'd had scheduled weeks ago, long before the dinner. As we went over numbers, investments, and future plans, I couldn't help but think how different that restaurant scene would have been if my family had known the truth. Not that it mattered now. A week passed. Then two. The silence from my side forced something new on theirs, effort. My sister showed up at my door one evening without warning. She looked smaller standing there, none of the confidence she'd worn at the restaurant. I just want to talk, she said. I considered closing the door. Instead, I stepped aside. She sat on my couch, hands clasped tightly in her lap. You blindsided me, she said. You blindsided me first, I replied. She sighed. I didn't mean it like that. You said exactly what you meant, I said calmly. You just didn't expect consequences. She looked up, eyes searching my face. Why didn't you ever tell us you were doing well? I didn't hesitate. Because every time I tried, you laughed. You minimized it. You decided who I was before I could show you. She had no answer for that. I need you to understand something, I continued. Money isn't the point. Respect is. And you didn't lose mine last week. You lost it years ago. Her shoulders slumped. Mom's been crying, she said quietly. I softened, just a little. I never wanted to hurt her. But protecting her feelings by destroying mine wasn't fair either. She nodded slowly. So, what now? I stood up and opened the door. Now, you leave. And if we're going to have a relationship, it starts fresh. No expectations. No entitlement. No assuming I'll always be there to fix things. She walked out without another word. Over the next few months, things shifted. Invitations came differently. Quieter. More respectful. Sometimes, they didn't come at all. And that was okay. The real change came when my mother asked to meet me alone. No family dinner. No audience. Just us. We sat at a small cafe, nothing fancy. She reached across the table and held my hand. I failed you, she said, tears in her eyes. I see that now. I believed her. Or at least, I believed she was trying. I'm not asking you to choose sides, she continued. I just want to know you're okay. I squeezed her hand gently. I am. More than I've ever been. That was the truth. Months later, I heard through relatives that the story of the restaurant had taken on a life of its own. Different versions floated around. Some painted me as cruel. Others admitted it was long overdue. I didn't correct anyone, because the real revenge wasn't embarrassing them in public. It wasn't the $2,200 bill. The real revenge was no longer needing their approval to feel whole. I built a life where I was respected, not tolerated. Where I was valued, not included out of obligation. And every time I sat at a table, whether alone or with people who truly cared, I knew one thing for sure. I would never again beg for a seat where I was never meant to feel welcome.